Shalom. Um, we're going to read Underground to Canada, written by Barbara Smucker, Chapter 2. Morning came to the slave quarters of Master Henson's plantation before there was light in the heavy black sky. It was 4 o'clock, and Master Henson's old ram horn bellowed and tooted until nobody slept. Frying soul belly smells from the cabin cooking fires helped wake the children. Drew Lily reached for a whole cake and a tin cup of buttermilk that Mammy Sally poured. From the barnyard, the roosters crowed sharp and clear. As on every other morning, Drew Lily smoothed down her crinkly hair, twisted it tight in a knot at the back of her head. But Mammy Sally, who always wore a clean white head rag neatly tied, this morning put on a black one in its place. There was no laughter in her full, strong voice as she called to one slave and then another who passed by their door. A worried frown stitched lines across her forehead. "Child," she said to Drew Lily in a yearning, mournful way, "there's trouble ahead for us nigger folk today." Her lips pinched firm and her eyes flamed with angry courage, but her voice stayed quiet. She gathered Drew Lily's hand into the strength of her long, black, calloused fingers. "Lord help us," she said. "The field hands are gonna be sold today. You are one of them, Drew Lily. You and I could be pulled apart." Drew Lily couldn't understand. Mammy Sally couldn't let this happen. Mammy shook Drew Lily into listening. "If we are sold apart, Drew Lily, and the Lord forbid, don't forget that freedom land I told you about. You and I are strong. We'll get there with the guidance of that star and the good Lord's help." A jaybird voice screeched suddenly outside their door. "You field hand niggers, line yourself up along this path and don't you loiter." The sound of a zinging whip cut the air. "Some of you ain't gonna chop no cotton today." Mammy Sally held Drew Lily close as they walked outside and joined the field hand line. The man with the jaybird voice strode back and forth in front of them. He was a big man with a short, thick neck. His cheeks puffed and jiggled as he walked. Drew Lily noticed that his fingers puffed too, over the whip that he flicked in his hand. He had a toothpick in his mouth that stuck between two yellow teeth. Drew Lily didn't like his oily skin. His faded brown hair was tangled and dirty. His baggy pants were streaked with drippings, and his little eyes were green and sly. He strode towards Lily Brown, a shy young mother, barely 16. She clutched her 2-year-old Willie in her arms. The fat man paused briefly beside her. His tiny eyes narrowed and he rubbed his oily hand down Willie's back. "This is a fat, strong nigger baby," he called to a younger white man behind him. "Put him in the wagon." Willie was ripped from his mother's arms without a comment. Lily screamed and fell to the floor. Drew Lily started to run towards her, but the firm hand of Mammy Sally grasped her shoulder. The fat man was stopping in front of them, clamping the toothpick hard between his lips. He stuck a fat finger into her mouth and squinted at her teeth. Satisfied, he pushed back her eyelids, looking at me like old John does his horse. Drew Lily thought and flamed with anger. "This one will do," the big man called towards the young man who had just dumped Willie in the cart. "She's strong and healthy and still growing. Get over there, girl, and get into that cart." He strode off down the line. Drew Lily didn't move. She looked at Mammy and for the first time in her life saw fear in Mammy Sally's eyes. Do like he say, child. Mammy's voice hurt and choked. You got to mind that man in order to save your life. Don't forget that place I told you about. The fat man looked back and screeched, Get in that wagon, girl, or I'll use this whip and teach you how to jump. There was moaning now and crying up and down the line of slaves. The big slave trader didn't care or hear. He lashed his whip in the air, pulling children from their mothers and fathers and sending them into the cart. Drew Lily moved towards the long wooden cart. Her feet pulled her there somehow, and she climbed inside. She looked for Mammy Sally, but Mammy was already being pushed with the older slaves far down beyond the tool shed. Drew Lily strained to find Mammy's black head rag. It was gone. Mammy Sally had disappeared. A red sun boiled up into the sky, making patches of heat wherever it struck the uncovered earth. Drew Lily sat still and numb in the unshaded wagon. Little Willie Brown whimpered beside her. She wanted to comfort him, but she couldn't lift her hand. She found it hard to swallow and wondered if she could make a sound if she tried to speak. Other children began climbing into the wagon. They were smaller than Drew Lily. They moved near her. Their little bodies twitched like a wild bird she had caught once and held for a moment before it broke into flight. 3 men were ordered into a line behind the cart. They stood like broken trees. Their hands dangled like willow branches in the wind. Drew Lily knew each one. There was Ben, solid and strong and as black as midnight. He could chop a woodpile higher than his head when the others still had little mounds up to their knees. There was kind, gentle Adam, whose singing was low as the sightless hollow in a tree. And then there was Lester, the mulatto, who with speckly skin and angry eyes. Each one had a wife and 1 or 2 babies. They didn't move when the fat man with his puffed, oily fingers clamped a chain around their legs. Drew Lily watched. The chain became a silver snake. It coiled over the ground around the men and up onto the back of their cart. It bit into a lock that held it fast. Another strange white man led a workhorse in front of them. Drew Lily was afraid to look at him. She felt the tug and jerk of the wagon and the bounce of the man as he jumped onto the front seat. Giddy up, he cried, snapping the reins. The snake chain jingled in protest while the men who were not used to it tried to swing their bound legs in some sort of order. The fat man with the toothpick still in his mouth rode behind them on a smooth brown horse. They moved down the dusty road past the empty slave cabins and around by Master Jensen's house. It was empty. There were no curtains in the tall windows or chairs on the wide shaded porch. Massa and Missy Henson were gone. Old John came through the wide front door, hobbled and bent. He shaded his eyes to watch the cabin gang and the wagon load of children. When he saw Drew Lily, his back straightened. Pulling a large white handkerchief from his pocket, he waved it up and down, up and down, up and down, until it became a tiny speck and disappeared. Tears ran down Drew Lily's cheeks. She couldn't stop them, but she made no sound. The fat man didn't notice her. That's the end of chapter 2, and we will read chapter 3 in the next video. Shalom.